Thank you very much. Before we start, I want to recognize just some of the elected officials behind me. Senator Jim Alisi, Senator Tom DeWayne, Assemblyman Danny O'Donnell, Assemblywoman Deborah Glick, Assemblyman Matthew Titone, and Assemblyman Harry Bronson. I want to thank them for their support. And before I bring the governor up, I have to say this. This has been one of those amazing 6 months in this state's history. And look back at what this man has done as governor. We've had an on-time budget, no new taxes, the changes that he has put forth in the state. He has changed the lives of New Yorkers across New York State with what he's done, with his leadership, his ability to get people to come and make a decision, culminating tonight where now every New Yorker has the right to marry. And I think when you look at what he has done and his partnership with the Senate, the Assembly, and all the advocates, it has been absolutely amazing. And this state is lucky to have Governor Cuomo as his governor. And I don't need a note to say this. I said this last week to him. Working with Governor Cuomo is like taking a painting class from Picasso. He is looking at what he has done, and this state is changing. And I can't imagine at any time in the history of this state that more work has been done in 6 months than we've seen now. And what the governor has said from the start, the governor said what he wanted to do when he ran for office. He wanted to bring back respect and decorum and collegiality. The partnership that he has fostered and built with the Senate and the Assembly, both sides of the aisle, people working together to change this state, has been absolutely amazing. It really has. And tonight, to be a witness to history in this state is just something that I don't think we could ever duplicate. So please give, welcome to the stage here, a man who, I will say this, I say it in this room so many times, I am so proud to work alongside this man, a man you trust him at his word. He says what he says publicly, he says behind the scenes. Leadership matters, ladies and gentlemen. Leadership does matter big time. And you saw it right there in the flesh, going back to January 1st through tonight. This did not happen by accident. It happened with leadership, vision, integrity, teamwork, all that. So please welcome, I don't want to offend his father, the greatest governor in the history of New York State, Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. 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 First, give a big round of applause to Bob Duffy, who's just a great lieutenant governor, a great partner. I couldn't ask for more. I want to applaud the legislative leaders, Senator Dean Scalos and Assemblyman Sheldon Silver, who is observing the religious holiday this evening, Senator John Sampson, Assemblyman Brian Kolb. They did extraordinary work. My colleagues who are here today, the Lieutenant Governor is exactly right. The past 6 months, we didn't work like we were Democrats and Republicans. We realized that first we were New Yorkers. We worked in a bipartisan way, and that made all the difference. And let's give the legislative leaders a round of applause. I also want to thank the people of the state of New York who were engaged in this session. We reached out to them through emails, through all sorts of forums all across the state. The advocacy organizations reached out to them, and they weighed in and they made a difference. Democracy works when the people speak, and the people spoke in volumes over these past few months, and this legislature responded this week to their calls. Bob is right. This was a period of historic progress on all fronts. When you look at what we accomplished this legislative session, the past 6 months, we really did what we said we were going to do. We laid out an agenda. We asked the people of this state to get involved. There was a comprehensive agenda. They got involved, and we made a difference. And whether it's the first property tax in the history of the state of New York, they were talking about it in the 70s. Massachusetts had a cap in the 80s. It was first proposed for New York in the mid-90s. And we actually got it done. And that's going to make a significant difference for people all across this state. The SUNY rational tuition plan, where people can actually plan and the universities are going to know the tuition that they're going to get so they can finance a future. The university centers with the SUNY 2020 for the 4 university centers, UB 2020, Stony Brook. That's going to make a major difference in major regions of this state. And you can just go on and on. The energy plan that we did, there hadn't been an Article 10 citing bill in 8 years, and we got that done. And a record that shows that you can make this thing called government work. It can perform, and it can do it with integrity. You put it together with a budget and the ethics bill, and we really did deliver on the agenda, and I truly believe this state is on a different trajectory than it was 6 months ago. And what we accomplished this evening with marriage equality really in some ways brings it all home. Because this state, when it is at its finest, is a beacon for social justice. The legacy of this state was that we were the progressive capital of the nation. And when you look back at so many of the great progressive movements that were birthed here in New York, the women's rights movement was birthed here in New York. The environmental rights movement was birthed here in New York, Storm King on the Hudson. The workers' rights movement was birthed here in New York after the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. All these great progressive movements. The gay rights movement was birthed at Stonewall. And what this state said today brings this discussion of marriage equality to a new plane. That's the power and the beauty of New York. The other states look to New York for the progressive direction. And what we said today is you look to New York once again, because New York made a powerful statement, not just for the people of New York, but the people all across this nation. We reached a new level of social justice this evening. Marriage equality. I said to the legislators, you look at the first word, marriage. It's really about the second word, equality. It's really about New Yorkers, our brothers and sisters, looking at us and saying, we want equality. We want equality in society, equality in our relationships, equality in our love, equality in our families. We want full recognition. Marriage equality. And we did it today. And that legislature worked together, and they responded to their better angels. They responded to their hopes, not their fears. 29 out of 30 Democrats. 4 Republicans who showed real courage. Senator Alessi, who's with us here today, let's give him a round of applause. And even the way we work together to make it happen. Senator Tom Duane and Assemblyman Dan O'Donnell, who've been fighting this for years. I applaud Mayor Mike Bloomberg, who stepped up to the plate and really, really worked. I applaud Governor David Paterson, who put this on the radar screen and on the agenda years ago and tried to pass it. You know, sometimes justice is an evolutionary process. And Governor Paterson, in that first vote, is an evolutionary process to where we are today. And I thank the advocacy community that came together from all across the nation and worked as one, and they were sophisticated, and they were smart, and they were constructive in their effort, and it was my pleasure to work with them. I'm always proud to be a New Yorker, but tonight I am especially proud to be a New Yorker. And I think and last but not least, I want to thank the greatest team of government professionals ever assembled. All these things that we did. It's a pleasure. Thank you. Any questions on this for myself or my colleagues?
Talk a little bit about the evolution of your own views on same-sex marriage and how you came to believe that it was the right thing to do.
Well, you know, guys, I've spoken to a number of legislators about this over the weeks, and they would say, well, you know, I was originally opposed. And I said, look, you'd be hard-pressed to find an elected official who wasn't originally opposed. You want to talk about the evolution of justice. This is a relatively recent explosion in the march to justice, right? A few years ago, we were fighting for civil unions. That was the threshold. So I think myself, many elected officials, you evolve to this point. And it was first equal rights in many ways, and it was Sonda, then it was civil unions, and now it's literally full equality. And that's what marriage is all about. So I think my trajectory, my evolution, I think is instructive. Spoke about it with many legislators, and I'm proud that I realized that not only was it right, but it was attainable. You know, I remember a conversation a few years ago where I said, well, I understand in concept that this is where you want to get, but it seemed almost unattainable just a few years ago. Because remember, civil unions was the goal. But I evolved, society evolved, public opinion has changed dramatically on this issue very, very quickly. And I think that's kudos to the people of this state. Roughly 60% of the people of the state support marriage equality. God bless. Jimmy?
Governor, President Barack Obama has fallen short of calling for marriage equality. What message does this vote send him, and what did you say this should inform about his position? I think
this vote today will send a message across the country. It will be directly impactful, obviously, for New Yorkers. The bill, by the way, I'm going to sign the bill this evening as soon as it comes down because we don't want any time to lapse. So, but I think it's a powerful message. It's impactful for New Yorkers, and it's a powerful message all across the nation, no doubt, that this is the direction to go, and the time to do it is now, and it is achievable. It's no longer a dream or aspirational. It is achievable.
Do you think this action makes it more likely that President Obama will come out in favor of same-sex marriage equality?
I think, Fred, you're going to see an evolution towards this position on all levels.
Including the President?
I think you're going to see it on all levels. You know, I don't want to speak for any one person, but I think you're going to see it. What you had to breach was the attitude, you had to prove that it was possible, that you could have a major populous state that's a sophisticated, complex state, and we have complex politics in this state, as we demonstrated to some of our guests, and we demonstrated over the past few weeks. But it is possible, and I think you're going to see an evolution, and I think you're going to see a rapid evolution.
Did you ever think during the day, during the long day that the Senate was behind closed doors, that they would not bring this out for a vote? And also, in the number of conversations you've had over the last few days with them, how did you try to encourage them to bring it?
You know, Yancey, I think you had a lot of people who worked on this for a very long time. The advocacy groups did a phenomenal job. And I think they were very powerful in persuading people. But at the end of the day, I think none of that, I think that's all, was all helpful. I think this was really about legislators, quality individuals who struggled with this issue and at the end of the day did the right thing. 29 out of 30 Democrats. I say that as a proud Democrat. 29 out of 30 Democrats. I think they did the right thing. Senator Alessi, Senator Grisanti, Senator Steve Saland, who was magnificent to work with on this issue, Senator Roy McDonald. These are people of courage and principle. They understood the facts, and they stood tall. And that's who gets the credit here, Yancey. The groups were great, but at the end of the day, if you didn't have people of courage and principle, none of it would have mattered. I don't care what the groups did. I don't care what I said. If they didn't have the courage and the principle, it wouldn't happen.
Governor, could you go into more detail about the struggle Senator Saland had? Did he convey something to you? Because he really seemed to be the most quiet of all the senators who voted.
I think what Senator Saland was struggling with, what many of us were struggling with, which is the balance of religious protection and marriage equality. And the approach that we took here in the state is we want both. I am a pro-marriage equality person. I am a pro-religious protection person, and one is not more important. And they have to be balanced, and you have to protect both. And you have to write a law that protects both. And I believe we did that. And I think we did that as a collaborative process. And Senator Saland and Senator Lanza and Senator Kemp Hannon and I spent hours and hours working on that law, back and forth. And then they would go back to the conference. And I think we came up with a chapter amendment that balanced the law and effectively protected religion and understood that distinction. And I think that's what gave the conference the courage to bring it to the floor, even if they disagreed with it.
Governor, about the chapter amendment, the non-severability clause, do you have any fear that this might not hold up in court if it is challenged?
No, because the non-severability clause first makes the point that both of these things are equally important. Religious freedom, religious protection, and marriage equality are equally important. And the concept of religious freedom is a sacrosanct constitutional premise. So, no, I don't see any legal threat to that.
Governor, most of your other accomplishments have been economic or fiscal. How important was it to you to get a win on a social issue?
I don't see it that way, Danny. It's not about a scorecard. This was a critically important accomplishment to achieve for the people of this state.
Governor, at what point did you have assurances from Senators Saland and Grisanti that they would be voting yes for this?
You'd have to ask Senator Saland and Grisanti. Those are.
Assurances beforehand that they would? Or?
You'd have to ask Senator Saland and Grisanti. When you have a private conversation with your governor, it stays private from the governor's point of view.
Conservative Party leaders are already criticizing the vote, and this will political consequences before Republicans who voted for the bill. Are you prepared in any way to help them campaign for them, or you intend your political clout to help them on this?
I think the people, for the Republican votes you're speaking of, I think they are people of courage. I think in some ways it was a more difficult vote for them than the 29 Democrats, depending on the Democrats' district. But I think it was politically more dangerous for a Republican. The Conservative Party was actually threatening them, as you know, with political consequences and primaries, and they did it anyway. And I think they showed themselves to be people of courage. That's what I believe. I represent the people of the state of New York. I'm going to tell them what I believe, and that's what I believe. To the extent that is the truth and it helps them, so be it.
Along the same line, do you think it was politically dangerous for Senator Skelos to bring it to allow the votes?
No. I think it would have been, I think the senator did it because it was the right thing to do. And I believe it was clearly the right thing to do. You know, one of the central tenets of democracy is vote, and let me know how you vote. I elect representatives. This is an important issue. I want to know how you vote. I don't know that there was a viable alternative to not bringing it to the floor, because I don't believe the people of the state would have tolerated it. So I think he handled it well. Look, it was an incredibly difficult issue. All of these issues, these were all, many of the things that we accomplished, these were either accomplishments that had defied completion for decades. Take that rent regulation. That is the best rent regulation law from the point of view of tenants since the 70s. First property tax in history. First time SUNY rational tuition in history. These were complicated, difficult tasks. The marriage equality vote was a complicated, difficult task. So to the extent people had to wrestle with it and the collective had to wrestle with it, of course. And that's the way it should be. And I think when you think back at it, it was a remarkably short period of time when you actually think about what we accomplished and what we went through.
Governor, what happened an hour and a half ago on the Senate floor when Senate Democrats found out that either you or your people didn't want them to debate the same-sex marriage bill, or many of them were very upset now? Why did that happen?
I don't know, Fred. I was watching it on TV. I think the time was short. The hour was late. And people wanted to vote and get on the road.
Steve I went up there having a private conversation with Senator Sampson.
He wasn't on TV.
They cut it out.
I think they just, maybe he wasn't telegenic enough.
I had a few things to say. Did you hear about that?
I have not heard about it.
The Lieutenant Governor knows about that.
Mike?
The discussion was restricted. Senator Salam spoke glowingly about the bill and explained just had a lot of time for that. Senator Diaz was cut off. Other Democrats were cut off. Kevin Parker was upset, very upset, that he wasn't allowed to speak. Is that a concern? Is that a problem? Or did it not matter at that point?
Perhaps the Lieutenant Governor could tell us what happened. He was presiding.
Yeah, that's fine. Look, do I think, can you always have a venue where everyone speaks ad infinitum? No. You can't. I mean, unless at one point you need to conclude and take a vote. And I think the vote is what is important here.
But it wasn't even following the Senate rules. That's the point. I mean, the rules set for how many people can speak and how long they can speak and when they should be cut off.
I assume they were following the Senate rules.
They should have been following.
I said, I assume they're following the Senate rules. I can't believe you think the Senate rules are everyone can speak whenever they want for as long as they want. That'd be a bad rule.
They weren't following the Senate rules.
I don't, then you know the Senate rules better.
Can you come through, Mike? I have a question for you. I was wondering, what was that conversation? What was the brouhaha when you were talking to the senators on the floor and you came down to the well? What was that conversation about? What were they trying to impress upon you?
It was just a clarification discussion, that was all. I think with something as emotional as this, there were a lot of issues put out there. We were trying to follow the Senate rules, and we're trying to follow those and be respectful of those rules, and that included both pro and con. I think Senator Diaz as well as Senator Duane, we tried to adhere to those rules, but discussion that was private, and it was just a clarification of where we're going to go next, and things worked out very well.
Senator Adams, what was he upset with you?
I didn't speak to Senator Adams. I spoke to two other senators.
Governor, could you imagine offering support in the re-election campaigns of any of the Republicans who voted to support this measure? Any kind of support?
You know, Danny, I told them I think this is going to be a good thing for them politically. That may seem like silly political advice, but I believe it. I believe they showed themselves to be people of courage and people of principle, and I think that's what people are looking for when they choose an elected official. And not that someone who necessarily agrees with them on every issue. And sometimes you can show more integrity and more courage by disagreeing than actually agreeing. And I think they showed themselves to be people of extraordinary courage and talent. And I think that's actually going to help them politically. Would any of my colleagues, before we conclude this, anyone, Tom, Danny especially, anyone want to say words? No, Dan?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.